Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Sarah, I'm a senior therapist at Autism Recovery Network. And today, me and my colleague Veena are going to be talking about online learning support for children on the spectrum during the pandemic. Before we move on, just a brief introduction about ourselves. I've been working in the field of special education as a psychologist for over 6 years now. And I've been with ARN for almost 2 years now. And I'll be discussing along with my colleague Veena about how we can support children on the spectrum when it comes to learning online, especially in the current scenario of the pandemic. So joining me is Veena. I'll hand over to Veena for a minute.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Veena. So I've been with ARN for the past 4 years. I've been working with children with ASD for quite some time now. So let's start on with the online learning support for children with autism. So Sarah will be elaborating a little bit more about the early learners, and I'll be later going on and talking about the advanced learners. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for joining us. And today's agenda is basically about online learning and how we can support children on the autism spectrum. Just give me a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So today's agenda is mainly focused on how to support caregivers of children with autism during the pandemic. Because as we all know, during the pandemic, children were at home and they were at home with the parents, with the caregivers. And so we are here to give you some strategies, some ideas and some tips on how to support children with autism when they are learning at home online. Following that, we will be talking about how you can collaborate with the child's therapist and how working as a team will help the child. Working together with your therapist is always beneficial. We will then talk about how to help your child with online learning. Learning online is a big change for everybody, including the parents. So how do we make it smoother and easier for a child who is on the spectrum? The fourth thing we're going to talk about is what to do next. Once we have dealt with the strategies, we have spoken about the strategies, what do we do next with the child's IEP goals? And we'll finally conclude, and we would welcome questions from whoever's joining us. We would welcome questions. Please ask your questions in the Q&A session. And if we will do our best to answer your questions. So let's start with let's start a little bit about ARN. So Autism Recovery Network has been around since 2005, and it has been supporting children on the autism spectrum and with other developmental delays for quite a while now. And we provide early intervention programs in different parts of Asia and have handled over 3,000 children. And we believe that every child is different, every child is unique. And through ABA-VB, we believe that the child can learn and gain skills and get more ready for just life ready, just ready for school, ready for being independent as they can be, and reach their fullest potential. A brief introduction about ARN from our advisor, Dr. James Partington, is just coming up.
I'm Dr. Jim Partington, and I'm board certified behavior analyst at the doctoral level who's been working in the field with children with autism and other disabilities for the last 46 years. During that time, I've also taught at universities and have written books and assessments that have been useful for parents and teachers to learn how to effectively educate individuals with developmental delays. I endorse the services that are provided by the Autism Recovery Network. 13 years ago, I began training their staff and helping them set up their clinic clinical systems and provide ongoing supervision, and also provide assistance to them in reviewing cases. The services that they provide are definitely high quality, and if you're a parent, I think when you're looking for services, I would recommend that you at least make an appointment, come by and talk to the staff and let them hear your story and see how they might be able to help you individualize the treatment that your child needs.
So that was a brief introduction about ARN. And coming back to our topic about how to support caregivers of children with autism during the pandemic, I would just like to elaborate about the different challenges faced by the child and by the caregivers during the pandemic. So studying from home, learning from home has been a big change, not just for the child, as we all know, but also for the caregivers. For the child, I mean, children on the autism spectrum, they thrive on predictability. They need to know what's going to happen next, what is coming next, what am I going to do next? And they do find it difficult to cope with change. So when there's a sudden change of, let's say, not going to school, staying at home, learning from home, it's a lot of things that are changing, and it can lead to a lot of confusion. It can lead to a lack of routine or structure, and this is where a child who's on the spectrum and who's not may not be very flexible might find it hard to cope with such a situation. And the reduced structure can lead to behaviors, challenging behaviors. The fact that they're staying indoors, the limited physical space can also lead to challenges. I can give you an example of one student who actually I used to deal with one-on-one at ARN at the center, and he was very good with tasks. I would give him work, written work, or any other work, and he was very compliant. But the moment it shifted to online learning, he was just unable to carry on. Although he knows me, although he's so familiar with me, but when he saw me on the screen, he was like, "No, I don't want to do this." And he started crying. He just wanted to go away from the screen. So it's a hard change to swallow, and some children adapt to it very fast. Some children don't adapt so easily, and we need to just understand that each child is different, and we need to understand that if one child is finding it difficult, there's no point forcing this child to sit through the online session, but how to support this child and make it easier for the child to go into online learning. And also for the caregivers, home-based learning has been, I'm sure, quite challenging. Personally, myself, I'm a parent and I found it extremely challenging. But for caregivers of children with autism, it's even more difficult because it's a feeling of loss of professional support, being alone, having to handle a child who already has difficulties in certain areas all by themselves. So there's a feeling of overwhelm, even like feeling exhausted. That how can I do this? And I already have work. So you might be parents who are working from home. They have to handle the child and also take care of their household duties and everyday life. So multitasking, a lot of juggling. And also sometimes parents have asked, like, how am I going to teach my child? I don't know how to teach my child. I don't understand what he needs to learn. So it's sometimes a feeling of helplessness. But the good thing is that it's good to talk about this. It's good to talk about the fact that there are challenges and that it can be emotionally draining. It can be very exhausting, but there are ways that we can go about it and try and find a way out. So moving on, the main solution to such challenges is to find right balance and to find what works for you. What works for you as a caregiver may not be what works for me as a caregiver, because my child is different from your child and every child is so unique. So we cannot reduce the demands. The demands are there. Let's say the child is tantruming or the child won't sleep. You need to do your work. You have a meeting and there's a lot of things going on. So you cannot really reduce the stressors and the strains. They will be there. But what we can do is to increase the resources. If you see the balance on the right-hand side, you see resources and coping behaviors. So we as therapists at ARN, we can team up with the parents and help the parents understand and help the parents cope better with the stressor. And this is the main way we can bring some balance to caregivers who are finding it very stressful and emotionally and physically who are exhausted. So how do we reach this balance? I know it's easier said than done. It's easy for me to just show you that picture, but it's difficult. It is difficult to attain that balance. It's not always easy, and every day will be different. Every day is not going to be great. Some days will be great. Some days will just not work out. But these are some strategies you can use to help your child switch to online learning. So the first basic step is you need to ask the question is, does online learning work for my child? So the example I just spoke about, this child has a lot of skills, but it did not work for him. It just didn't work for him. So what we did was we collaborated with the parent and we would coach the parent on how to conduct tasks, and the parent would do it. Actually, even the sister, this boy's sister also got involved and started carrying out tasks for him. Another thing we did was we would have online Zoom calls where the parent would be taking a session with the child on a table, and the therapist would be online, therapist or supervisor would be online giving inputs and giving feedback to the parent that, maybe you can try this way, maybe ask him in that way, maybe give him a break now. And that's how we actually teach the parent, and we work collaboratively for a more effective session. So for some children, when it doesn't work, online learning doesn't work, don't get disheartened. We can still continue it, but it will be more involvement from the parent side. So that's the main difference. Create a weekly schedule for your child. Having structure in your day and in your week is very beneficial for your child and for you. Incorporate play as part of your schedule. Let your interaction with your child be not just work related. Working from home, the plus point is you get time to bond with your child. So spend time, even if it's just 20 minutes a day, playing with your child. Talk to your child about changes. So this is something that sometimes parents feel, oh, my child doesn't talk much, is non-verbal. What will he or she understand if I talk to him about COVID? But you would be surprised that, even if a child is non-verbal, you don't know how much the child might understand. So in simple words, you can just tell him that, today we're going to play at home, no more school. You can use visuals and explain to the child, and maybe the child will understand 50% of it, but still it's at least something better than nothing. So it's always better to prepare your child as to what is happening next and about changes. Engage in functional skills training with your child. This is basically daily living skills. So when you're at home, instead of only academics, you can focus on how to make your child as independent as possible, whether it's having a bath, setting the table, or wearing your socks. It can be simple things as that, but it will help the child later on to be more independent. And it'll help you also because you don't have to do it for the child. So don't only focus on academics, try and focus also on daily living skills. Stay connected with your child's therapist. This is very important because the more support you have, the better it is for you and your child. If you just feel you're alone going to handle everything, you may be able to do it for a while, but after a while, it will really become a burden and it'll just be overpowering and overwhelming. So connect with your therapist, take their feedback and apply their feedback, not just say, okay, yeah, I hear you, but the next day you're just not following through. So apply the feedback. Understanding your child's IEP is essential because if you know where your child is right now, like currently what his or her abilities and skills are, then you will understand what kind of task to give to the child. For example, if a child is at the alphabet stage, just learning alphabets, and then if the caregiver gives him a sentence to write, you will, I promise you will have a lot of behavior. You will have a lot of tantrum because it's not at the current level of the child. So understanding your child's current level is very important. Create a social story. This is basically for children who are able to read and who are able to understand stories. Social stories help in explaining, like, if there's a change, why are we at home, what is COVID. But this is obviously for some children, not for all children. Like children who are not yet readers won't really benefit from social story. And as much as possible, simulate the school environment. Remove most, I mean, when you're doing work with your child, try to remove distractions, toys, anything, even sounds. I know it's hard, it's not easy, but it is possible as much as possible. I'm not asking you to do something drastic, but maybe just the table can be clear of distractions and anything that's not relevant to the to what you're going to do with the child. So these are some strategies which you can try while working with your child online. And yes, collaborating, this I had already spoken about, but I'll just quickly go through it. Basically, collaborating with your child's therapist will help the caregiver's stress to be managed better. It's a partnership which will really be helpful to the child and to the caregiver. It helps manage expectations. So like I said, if the parents' expectations are unrealistic, are a bit too high, then the therapist can give that feedback that maybe right now he or she is not ready for this. Maybe we cut down a bit and give a simpler task. And it also leads to a better understanding. The caregivers understand the child better, and there's higher levels of appreciation and motivation on both sides, not just from the child, but from the caregiver as well. So moving on. Yeah, okay, so this is just a little picture. Yes, so these are some, okay, hold on, sorry, I think skip one. Give me a moment. I think we skipped one slide. Yeah, that's one here. So we're gonna I'm just gonna talk about early learners and advanced learners. So basically, we have children coming to ARN of varied skills. Each child has a different skill set, and each child is unique and different, as I mentioned earlier. So we have children who are early learners, who are basically who work very well one-on-one, who may need support during transitions. Transitions means changes of location, changes of routine, any change. Basically, they find it hard to adapt to changes. They may follow simple instructions like, come here or give me this, but they may have difficulties with attention and focus. And they may need movement breaks. They may not, it may be difficult for them to sit through for like half an hour. Maybe after 10 minutes of work, they need to run around a bit. And child who's an early learner thrives in a structured environment. And by structure, I mean they know what is now, what is next, what's happening next, what am I going to get, how much of work am I going to get, and when am I going to get it. So that's an early learner. And an advanced learner would be someone who communicates more through words or phrases, is good with following group instructions, not just one-on-one, is able to handle transitions easily, might have difficulties in social interaction and maintaining friendships, and is able to cope with academic tasks in a group with minimal assistance. Maybe they need a little bit of verbal prompts, but not so much of assistance. They're quite independent. So the reason we have put these two separately is not to classify, is not to label or to judge the child, but it's just to understand that your child has certain skills, and to understand your child, if your child is an early learner or an advanced learner. And there are a lot of children who fall in this category, that is, who are in the middle, who are in the center, the shaded area here. So basically, there are early learners who follow group instructions well. And there are advanced learners who have difficulties with attention and focus. So there is no, it's not black and white. Every child has shades of both. So we're not trying to classify here, but the strategies that we use for an early learner will be different from the strategies used for an advanced learner. I will be talking more about early learners and how to help early learners. And Veena will be talking more about advanced learners. Yeah, so for the early learner, some strategies which could be useful are enhancing cooperation through pairing, creating structure for your child, understanding your child's goals, IEP goals, balancing demands and reinforcers, improving attention and focus, because that is one main area for an early learner. To sit down and do a task might be challenging, and to sit through for 20 minutes might be very demanding for an early learner. And lastly, to manage challenging behaviors. So when the early learner shows challenging behaviors, what should you do? What would work? So we start with pairing, and pairing is basically playing with your child and completely, thoroughly, and intentionally playing with your child, and with no conditions attached to it. As in, it's not like, okay, I'll play with you, and then after that, you have to do this for me. No, it's just let the child take your lead. If the child likes Play Doh, then you play with the child with Play Doh. If the child likes water play, then you try and play with the child with water. And it's basically building rapport with your child, being in tune with your child and what your child likes. And there's no right or wrong way to play. So I have encountered myself, and I've also done it. I feel I've made the mistake of sometimes when children play in a certain way, which is so-called the wrong way. It's not really what is usually how you play with that object. You might say, "Hey, what are you doing? That's not the way you play. That's not the way you play with a puzzle. You need to do it this way." So try to avoid doing that. Try to avoid telling your child how to play, but just be there, and you can narrate while the play is going on. Let's say the child is non-verbal but is playing with a dollhouse, then you can just talk about, oh, look, we're going to give the dolly a bath, or we can go to the supermarket. To be anything, but you're talking, and don't think your talking is a waste. Your child is listening, even if your child is non-verbal. So very low demands, not too much of work, no tape. It doesn't have to be on a tabletop, and it leads to building trust and instructional control. Instructional control basically means compliance from the child. So if you pair with your child, if you bond with your child, it's higher likelihood that the child is going to listen to you and follow your instructions. Whereas if it is going to be fear based, or if it's going to be just the pairing has not been done well, then the child may not be as compliant. So it is a very helpful, and it's a very important tool to have pairing, and it should not be underestimated. So skipping the pairing process can lead to an increase in problem behaviors, decrease in cooperation and trust. There could be a negative impact on the caregiver-child relationship. The child might not even want to do a task, because the child might feel every time I'm with you, you're only talking about work. So the child is like, no, I'm just going to run away. So you will see a lot of these kind of behaviors where the child is trying to escape the task. And there might be compliance based on fear, like let's say you scold the child, or you say that you threaten that you might punish the child might follow. But the disadvantage with that is it's not going to be long term. That might work 1 or 2 times, but let's say you're not around, or there's another caregiver, then the child may not again follow. So pairing is very important, and it enhances motivation. The child wants to be with you, and you become a person who they want to play with, want to be with. And the best part about pairing is tasks and learning can be unknowingly put into the play. Like, I'll show you a video after this where the therapist is actually pairing with the child, but at the same time, through play, the child is learning some concepts. And that's the best kind of learning, in my personal opinion, when the child does not know that the child is learning. It just incidentally learning is happening through play. And that really leads to better retention as well. The child remembers concepts when it's fun. Learning can be fun. So I'll show you the video. This is basically a therapist pairing with her student. Okay, give me a moment.
And move here and here, there, move everywhere. Knows how to farm. Oh, and on his farm he had a sheep. E-I-O, and a ba here and a ba there, here, ba there, ba everywhere, ba ba. Alexander had a farm. E-I-E-I-O, and on his farm he had a and a quack quack here and a quack quack there. Here a quack, there a quack, everywhere. Oh, McDonald's had a farm. Oh, wow, wow. Row, row, row the boat gently down the. If you see a crocodile, don't forget to.
Okay. So as you can see from the video, you can see the joy on the child's face. And that's when he or she will enjoy being with you and learning with you. The next strategy is creating structure for your child. As I mentioned, it's essential to have structure. And children who are on the spectrum thrive on structure and do very well when there is predictability, when they know what's coming up next. So predictability is key. Try and have a daily visual schedule. So the picture on the left is the daily visual schedule I'm talking about. It could be pictures like this, or it could also be real life pictures of the child actually doing things. And once an activity is done, the child takes out the card and puts it into a box to indicate that it's finished. You could also have a timer, a visual timer here. If you don't have it, even your phone, use a timer on your phone just for transitions, so that the child knows, okay, 20 minutes of iPad time is 20 minutes, and when the timer rings, we move on to doing something else. That helps with transitions. Clear expectations from the caregivers of how much screen time or play time, how much and when. It's not going to be any time throughout the day, and it's not going to be unstructured. It's going to be very intentional, that there's going to be play from this time to this time, but after that we're going to do work. Then provide reinforcers when the task is completed. It's very important, because if you promise something and you don't give it to the child, your child is not going to trust you ever again, and will not want to work with you. So if you promise iPad time after doing half an hour of work, let's say 20 minutes of iPad time, but then you don't give 20 minutes, or you don't give iPad at all and say, sorry, no, we're not doing iPad now, then the child is not just going to be upset, but he will never trust you again. So it's very important to provide reinforcers immediately. When the child does something good, catch him or her being good, and give the child a reinforcer. And always remember to set aside some family time, if possible, even 10 minutes, where everyone is together, spending time with each other. So this will help with predictability and structure. And this is a short video of a visual schedule, which we use.
Yes. Cross up. Writing is finished. Cross up. That's right. Okay. Ready?
So this is a visual schedule. As you can see, it's various pictures. And once this child is from our center, and once he finishes one activity, he crosses it out, indicating that it's done, so that he knows what's coming up next. And that helps him not get very anxious about what is going to happen next. He's more relaxed. And so the next strategy is to understand your child's current skill set, which I spoke about earlier. It's just a visual, and it's the only way to move towards progress, to know your child, where your child is now. Sorry. Is it a can't do or a won't do? Is your child really not able to do it, or is it behavior? It's hard to gauge, but it can be done. You need to just be a little, try and understand. If the child is not able to write, then maybe you have to back up a bit and give him a simpler task. Make him better at, let's say, drawing lines, drawing shapes, and then move on to alphabets. Always discuss IEP goals with your child supervisor therapist. Have realistic goals, smart goals, and follow your child's pace. How one child progresses is completely different from how another child progresses. So there's really no point comparing that child is able to do it, but why is my child not able to do it? Because every child has their speed and pace, and if pushing them too fast and too much might just cause unnecessary stress on both ends, for the caregiver and for the child. Moving on. Yeah, this is just about balancing task demands and reinforcers. So when you give a child work, let's say I'm talking about an early learner. Let's say I gave a child coloring and they don't enjoy coloring at all. But what I can do is I can manage how difficult it can be. I can maybe say, okay, you just put 10 strokes of coloring, and then I will give you your favorite toy. So there I've managed the duration of the task and the difficulty of the task. So I've reduced the duration and reduced the difficulty, so then child is at least attempting to do it. If I'd pushed him too far, he might get frustrated, he might start showing behavior. So that's about task duration and difficulty. Some children need movement breaks, and it's been proven, research has been done that movement actually enables a child to be more attentive, more focused. So it's not wrong to give your child a break, especially the really young ones, let's say 2 to 3 years old. It's really unreasonable to expect them to stay seated. If they're getting up and moving around, that's fine. Let them move around, but then let's say you give it a time. Maybe after 5 minutes, you bring them back and give them a short, quick task, and then they get to move around again. So movement breaks are necessary, and some children they really need it. Understand the reinforcer that you're using. If iPad is something your child likes, give the iPad after the child finishes some work. But if the child does not enjoy iPad, understand the reinforcer strength. There's no point giving a child iPad who does not enjoy iPad. So then the child will be like, why should I work? I don't want iPad. I want, let's say, toy train or something else. So figure out your child's like and work around that. There has to be consistency of reinforcement. That's very, very important. Like, let's say this happens very often. Let's say the mom gives iPad after the child does some work. But then mom goes out to the shop and she's not at home. And dad is at home, and dad does not give iPad after the child finishes some work. So there's no consistency. And when there's no consistency, that's when the child will be completely confused as to what is happening. Like, why am I given iPad or whatever, screen time or toys with one parent and not with the other? And this can lead to a lot of frustration, and the child might show behavior. And it's best to avoid triggering such behavior by be consistent. Like, if you promise this for this work, then both parents have to be on the same page. And lastly, visual supports to aid task completion. So that's what you have here on the right. It's a first then schedule. It's a very simple one on a whiteboard. It doesn't have to be pictures. But for a reader, this works. For a child who reads, so first math, then iPad. So no going back on that. Like, sometimes, let's say the parents follow through with this, but then let's say the grandma or the auntie or someone else might be like, oh, poor thing, it's okay. I'll just give iPad, it's fine. She's crying, just give her the iPad. Then it's gone. The consistency is lost, and the child learns that I cry and I tantrum and I will get iPad. So it's important to stay consistent. Okay, moving on. These are some visual supports that you can use to help the child choose. Always give the child a choice as much as possible. So children on the spectrum work very well with visuals. They're visual learners, and Veena will talk about it later. But there are choice boards which you can use. Like, the first one is basically there are 6 choices, and the child can pick up one choice and put it next to the I want. And this is just to make it very clear that after you do work, you will get this. And the child is choosing, not the parents. So it's the child's choice. Another choice board is over here, actually using actual objects. Oh, I'm sorry. using actual objects. Like here we have bubbles and here we have paints. And over here we have food as a reinforcer, but the child is choosing one of them. And there's a strip they're saying I'm working for and the object that the child would choose. So this helps with, there's no struggle later because the reinforcer was chosen by the child. Moving on, another set of visual supports which can be used. First, then boards, which I actually showed earlier, but these are actual visual boards using pictures. So first you finish math, magnetic numbers, and then you get ball bounce. And as a child understands first, then, we can actually increase the first, then schedule to first, next, then. We can have maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 pictures so that the child knows that this is my schedule. First, I go circle time, then I do table task, and then I have Play-Doh. And this can be used for anything. It can be like first breakfast, then bath, then do math. It can be anything. So these pictures can change. But it gives the child predictability and understanding of what comes next. Yeah, and then have a few strategies of how to improve attention and focus, because this is something that a lot of parents have asked me about. Like, how do I make my child sit still? My child just doesn't want to sit still. But the main thing is to create a structured environment, which I spoke about earlier, minimize loud sounds and distractions as much as possible. Pairing, as I spoke about earlier, can be so much fun, and a child will attend to you more if you engage in pairing with a child. Then gradually introduce the task. Use a sandwich technique. That's basically give the child easy tasks first. Make it fun for the child. Give very easy tasks, and then slowly introduce a difficult task, and then go back to easy tasks. So sandwich the difficult task in between easy tasks. Don't straight away start off with a difficult task, and the child will be like, "What are you doing? This is really hard for me." So that's another strategy. Keep instructions simple. Give your child extra time to understand the instruction. After you give an instruction, don't immediately say, "Come on, tell me, hurry up, what, answer me." No, that's too much, just stressing the child and yourself. So give your child at least 5 counts. And then if still the child is not able to, then prompt the child and help the child with the answer. Include movement breaks. Anticipate and decrease potential stressors. It could be a sound, it could be too much lighting, anything that stresses the child, try and reduce. Be aware of sensory needs. Is your child sensory seeking or sensory avoidant? And if the child, let's say, does not like a particular brightness of light, then don't use it as much as possible. If a child is crying, then you can dim the lights so they calm down a bit. Be aware of that and use visual aids, what I just spoke about. These could help your child focus better. Okay, moving on. And my last segment is managing challenging behaviors. When your child shows challenging behaviors, be a behavior detective and find out what was the trigger, what happened before the behavior occurred, and what happened after the behavior occurred. So what triggered the child to cry? Maybe it was you took away his favorite toy, but after he started crying, did you give back the toy? Did you give in? Or did you just say, let him calm down on his own? It all depends on that. So try and understand why the behavior is happening and try not to give in to your child when he or she starts crying. It's harder than to practice, but it's possible. Yeah, and moving on, when we look at a child who shows tantrums, who shows behavior, understand the reason the behavior is occurring. Is it because the child wants a toy? Tangible means a toy or an iPad or a thing. Is it because your child wants to escape the task? Is it because they want attention? Is it medical? As in, is the child unwell, or maybe the child didn't sleep enough and is cranky? Always check medical first, because that's the most simplest reason could be the child is not well. And it could be a sensory overload, too much noise, too much screen. Maybe the child had a very tiring day in the morning and then you're giving him a lot of work. It's a bit too much for the child to handle. So understanding this will help you manage challenging behaviors better. So these are just some tips on how to handle each of the challenging behaviors. If it's a tangible, if it's something the child wants, give the child a simple task, very simple, quick task, and then give him the tangible. So he understands, okay, if I do work, if I do something, I will earn my reward. It's not for free. Then if it's escape, then give escape as a reward. Make the child do a task and then say, okay, you're free to run around for a bit. So then the child understands again that I do something, I get a break. If it's attention, give a lot of time to pairing, playing, and give positive attention to the child. If it's medical, obviously attend to the child's needs. Reduce task demands. Try not to give any task at all if your child is unwell. And if it is sensory overload, reduce it and let the child calm down. Give the child time to calm down. If it's sensory seeking, provide sensory input. So we have a lot of strategies like a sensory box or playing with water. It helps the child calm down. Provide that as a. So these are some strategies to help you manage challenging behaviors better. Moving on to the next. Okay, so I'll hand it over now to Veena, who will be taking over about advanced learners.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'll be telling you more about the strategies that we can use for your child to cope with online learning. So this is mostly for the advanced learners. Yeah, so we'll start by talking about, so these are the aspects I'll be covering today. So first will be rapport building, reviewing your child's current skill set and how we can then move on upwards for them to achieve mastery. And then we'll also be talking about some of the strategies. I know that Sarah has actually already spoken about some of the strategies for the early learners. I will be talking about some of the strategies, sort of similar strategies, but something a bit more expanded that we can actually cater to for the advanced learners. And lastly, we'll also be talking about reinforcement. So firstly, we'll start by talking about rapport building. So rapport building is extremely important. It's very similar to pairing that Sarah actually mentioned earlier. So what's the difference is that for advanced learners, the thing is they are able to communicate with the caregiver on the types of toys they like to play with, right? So as a parent, try to step in and engage with them through play. So as Sarah mentioned, don't if the child is playing in a way that is not the typical play behavior that is exhibited by the child, don't try to step in immediately and don't try to correct them immediately. Rather, your job as parents and caregivers should be to step in to observe their play preferences, step in to see the range of toys that they like to play with, and then try to figure out what other toys I can, try to expand their play items and activities. Okay, and always very important to build on your child's interest. So what I mean is, for example, if you're working with a child who's an advanced learner, and for instance, he likes to play with trains. So you can actually have, say, if for example, you're using a token system with your child, say, for example, the child has to get 3 happy faces before he gets to play with the train set. Then after each completion of an activity, perhaps you can get you can give him or her a train ticket so that he is motivated to work for you. So that's how it's very important for parents to actually contrive the motivation of the child and to keep them engaged in these activities. So these are just a few other slides that I've created. So this one is talking about how you can create your own materials with your child. So this, because now during this lockdown period, right? So a lot of the sessions have been moved online for your students. And I know that it might be a bit challenging for parents to manage your own time as well as manage your children's work. But this is also a very good opportunity, like Sarah mentioned, for you to bond with your child. And how you can do that is actually by creating some of your own materials at home. Maybe you can create dolls using recycled materials. You can create puppets and other stuffed toys around the house. Yeah. And using this, you can then read to your advanced learners, say books, and you can use these puppets to narrate, to make the reading time more animated and lively. And slowly after this rapport building, you can slowly also insert some questions. And then you will realize that actually, because you are giving the child the space for them to pair and for you, and you're making the effort to build the rapport with your child, you will realize that the child is more likely to actually listen to you and respond to you as a result. So next, we will be talking about some of the online learning, the main focus of online learning. So the main objective of online learning initiatives is actually to maintain and sustain the skills. So it's not so much that you want to move forward with new drills or new activities for your child. So the emphasis should be on maintaining the skills that has been taught in school. So as parents, please try to reinforce what is actually being taught in school. And there's a lot of online resources available actually. So you can tap onto these online resources as well as apps and try to maximize the use of these learning apps and resources. And next, I talk about building behavior momentum. So what exactly does behavior momentum mean? So when you talk about behavior momentum, it's actually basically trying to contrive the motivation of your child towards work. And so basically how you do that is you start slow. So you start with a simple activity. So for instance, I know that many parents will be saying, oh, but in my son's school, perhaps they're teaching 3-digit addition already. So why do I start with a easier activity? Yeah, so the thing is, you want your child to work with you, right? So maybe your child is able to work with teachers and the child may be able to work with therapists because they have the rapport already. So as parents, I know it's a new thing for y'all, perhaps. So step in, take the initiative to build the rapport, start with easier activities, and then insert difficult activities as you go along. So that's one of the ways that you can build the behavior momentum. So in this situation where I mentioned about the child doing 3-digit addition, how you build behavior momentum perhaps would be starting with 2-digit addition. Even though your child may know you start with something easier, the child might be more willing to actually work for you, right? And also, as you please reinforce, as you go along with the activities, reinforce your child, praise your child. So that I will be talking about in the next few slides. Okay, so how are we going to increase your child's focus and motivation for task completion? So these are the strategies. The first one would be token system. So what exactly is token system? I'll be elaborating in the next slide. And we also have other strategies such as visual schedules, activity schedules, as well as video modeling. So yeah, so for token system, the fundamental aim of actually having token systems would be to increase the frequency of a targeted behavior. Okay, so for example, usually a token system, it's not just about having happy faces. They say you collect 3 happy faces and you get the reinforcer. You get 5 happy faces, you get the reinforcer. So that's not exactly the aim of token system. Yes, it gives the child a visual cue as to when they're going to get the reinforcer, as well as how many more activities they have to work for to get the reinforcer. But the main aim of token system is actually to work through the rules. There's certain rules that there will be in place in the token system. So things like quiet hands, quiet voice, stay seated, so on and so forth. Another thing to note would be that when you create these rules, make sure that it is in a language that is understandable for your child, even though they may be advanced learners. So for instance, sometimes parents may say things like, stay focused, right? So what does focused mean? So elaborate it, make sure your child knows exactly. If you're going to use very complex jargons like focused or much more difficult words for them to understand, then make sure it's already elaborated to your child. Also, another thing is that along with these rules, you will also be having expected and unexpected behaviors. So tell your child clearly. So if you exhibit certain good behaviors, like you're sitting well, you are doing work, you're focused, you're so on and so forth, then make sure that you are praising the child for when they exhibit such good behaviors. And it should not be the case where you're only praising the child when they are doing good work. Okay, so please make sure to praise your child as they are being good. And also make sure to go through what are the unexpected behaviors you do not want to see and clearly elaborate to them what are the consequences there will be as a result. Do not punish them. But one way, usually what we do during our therapy session would be that we will remove a happy face to tell them that, and explain to them clearly, oh, because you are running around, what are the rules, and then point to them the rules that they are supposed to be eliciting. Yeah. And next we talk about visual schedules. So visual schedules is basically talking about the days, events, and their sequences. So this is something elaborated on by Sarah already. So it actually tells the child very clearly what is currently happening, what is going to come up, what have they already done, and what are the changes that might occur. Okay. And next we talk about activity schedules. So activity schedules are also visual cues for your child, but these are visual cues for a particular activity. Okay, so for example, things like learning how to tie their own shoelaces or wearing their shirt. So how do they wear? So there will be typically, like Sarah mentioned earlier as well, there will be images of a child wearing their own shirt, taking out the shirt first, making sure it's on the correct side, and then before putting them on, so on and so forth. Or alternatively, you could also take a picture of your child wearing a shirt or tying a shoelace and then get them to show it to them and ensure that they're able to complete it independently later on. Next, we talk about video modeling. So video modeling is typically used to teach an abstract concept. Okay, so things like emotions, okay, especially for advanced learners, right? So you might choose to show a video to show videos about emotions such as like maybe basic emotions, or if someone is sad, how does someone else interpret this person's behavior? So these are some instances you can use video modeling, because we do know that some children on the autism spectrum have poor theory of mind. So they're not able to understand another person's perspective very well, right? So this is one way by using videos, it actually breaks down the learning for them. Yeah. So next we talk about the benefits of the strategies that I just mentioned. So because we are having such a clear structure for them, because a lot of children on the autism spectrum, they are visual learners. Okay, not all, but a lot of them they are. So because we are using these visual cues for them, what happens is that there is a certain sense of structure, and children with autism really thrive strongly on structure and predictability. And as a result, because of this clear structure and clear understanding of what's going to come up next, the likelihood of them throwing a tantrum or displaying inappropriate behaviors is going to be much lesser. It's going to increase the on-task behavior, their attention and focus, and likely that it will increase their independence towards these activities as well. So next we talk about reinforcement. Okay, reinforcement is extremely important. So when you reinforce your child, try to have a variety of items to reinforce your child with. So this is typically for us during our therapy sessions, we actually do preference assessment. So what preference assessment is actually we have a chart, in a piece of paper, we will be writing down the types of toys the child likes to engage with, how frequently the child is engaging with a particular toy, and from there we can actually have a gauge of the types of materials or types of toys they prefer, whether it's going to be tangible items, do they prefer social praises, are they more of a person who likes edibles, so things like that. And always, as much as I would say, I would recommend parents to have a mixture of reinforcers. So it's not always going to be social praises. Okay, after some time, if you're just going to say very good, excellent, and that's about it, after a while, your child might not be as focused because it's just words, right? There's no actual physical element there for them. So aside just words, praises, and perhaps say hugs or tickles, also do try to give toys. So toys, it can be any kind of manipulatives for your child. such as slinky. It could be putty, slime. So these are things that your child will likely be able to feel and touch, especially if they are a kinesthetic learner. And also for edibles, of course, you have your regular things like chips, so on, snacks, popcorns, and all that. But yeah, try to incorporate in that as well some healthy snacks as well for your child. That would be great. Yeah, so next, we're going to talk about implementing your child's IEP goals after the online session. And so basically, how are we going to implement the IEP goals will, of course, depend on the type of learner your child is. So yes, I did mention that a vast variety, a vast majority of children on the spectrum are visual learners. However, not everyone is the same, right? So everyone learns differently, and these are the various types of learners that we have. So we have children who are more of an auditory learner, who may be of a kinesthetic learner, who may be more of a visual learner. So parents, please observe and see what kind of uh, learner they may be. So of course, I understand that some parents may be wondering, so my child is non-verbal, right? And my child is an early learner. So how am I going to figure out the type of learner that they may be? So here, what I would say is that try to observe the types of toys that the child is playing with. Are they more of a person who listens to songs or listens to audiobooks? Then perhaps it could be that they may be an auditory learner. Or if they are more into manipulatives, they're more into physical toys or things, they like to use their fingers, use their hands, engage in maybe sand play or water play, then perhaps on putty and all of that, perhaps they may be of a kinesthetic learner. And same goes with visual learners. If they like pictures, they like videos, they like books, they may like to look out of the window and take in the sights and so on. So this is for early learners. So I would say this is the approach I would typically use. So still look at the type of toys your child may be playing with. But for advanced learners, it might not be this case that you can tell just by looking at the books or looking at the reinforcers that your child is engaging with. So it might be easier actually with the advanced learners because you can ask them what type of materials you can observe, and you can also, when you're doing worksheets, for example, are they able to better grasp it when it is, say, for example, they're doing reading comprehension. So are they able to do it much better when there's a visual cue provided? Are they much better if the comprehension worksheet is perhaps read to them? So it might be easier for you to gauge. You can even ask them and they may be able to give you an input on that, right? So might be easier with advanced learners, but it's not completely impossible to gauge, even for early learners. So here are some of the activities for early learners. So we have things like sorting activities. So these are some things that you as parents can actually do up at home using some of the recycled materials available. So even things like clothespins, right? So you have different colored clothespins, you can put it in different colored boxes. And then that's how you do sorting by color. So all the yellow pins go in the box, in a yellow box perhaps, stuff like that. And we have matching tasks as well. So matching by color, matching pictures to a book, and matching numbers. And for activities for advanced learners, we have counting activities. And so basically when we start by teaching counting, please always start with concrete items. So basically objects. So because children with autism are visual learners, it will greatly help them if you have visual and physical concrete items for them to count rather than using pictures or using worksheets to start on the counting activity. Same goes with addition and subtraction. Use physical objects. So here I believe that's a dinosaur. So use physical toys to teach them addition and subtraction. So you can have those rubber dinosaurs and you can get them to add, you can get them to count all of them and write the answer. Counting change. So this is another way we can teach counting change, as well as pretend play. So pretend play, always please have some pretend play toys. We usually have the doctor kit, we have the doll set. So all of these will be greatly helpful to engage with your child on pretend play skills and working on pretend play skills. So we have more activities here, such as matching words to pictures. So when you talk about matching words to pictures, typically these are for learners who have just started reading. Perhaps they have some understanding of, they are able to read 3 and 4 letter words. So that's when you introduce matching words to pictures to see whether, to have a gauge as to whether they are able to match the word to the corresponding picture. Matching pictures to phrases. Okay, this is an interesting one actually. So it says here, the black dog, right? So this is actually testing the child to see whether the child is attending to both the words given there. So it's black as well as dog, right? So you can have different pictures, and maybe one can be a black dog, can be a white dog, can be a black cat, a white cat, so on and so forth, and see whether the child is able to match the correct picture to phrase. So this is testing on their child's attention and focus, and it's quite, it works both ways. I mean, it works for advanced learners, and you may be willing to try on early learners as well if they are able to read. Yeah. So reading comprehension, the thing about reading comprehension I want to highlight is please start with simple reading comprehension worksheets, especially if the child has just started reading. Okay, so you can still try and maybe include a visual cue, a picture for the child, so that they will be able to look at the image and figure out the story. And when you talk about the passage, make sure it's just 2 or 3 lines, and you can include an MCQ section, or you can ask them verbally to see whether they're able to respond. So here are some of the fine motor activities for early and advanced learners. So some of you might be wondering, why do I need to do such simple tasks for my advanced learners? They are already, going, maybe they might be attending mainstream schools, or they are already at a level where the parents might believe that they are capable of doing more. So the thing is, fine motor activities have actually been proven to improve the self-regulation of students with autism. So it helps them to calm down after a stressful activity or too much academic workload. It helps them to calm down and regulate themselves. So that's why I include this segment for both early and advanced learners. Okay. Next. Yeah, so next we'll talk about how we are going to put feedback into practice. So, oops, sorry. Yeah. So as parents, please do collaborate with your therapist. It's extremely important to work as a team. So once the child, so it's not just the child goes for therapy and then once he's out, that's it. Okay, parents, please step in, always follow up with the therapist on what are the things that they can work on or what was done well. So it's not always what can be worked on. Remember to always praise your child for being good during the therapy session. So this is not something many parents actually do. Most of the parents, they're always, most of the parents I have worked with, I see that once the therapy session is over, they just bring them back home. There's not much work being done at home. But not just that you should be doing work at home. On top of that, please also check in with the therapist. If the therapist is giving good feedback, accept it and praise your child. And also if the therapist mentions to you things that can be worked on, take that into your consideration as well. So once the therapy session is over, you bring your child back home, you as parents have tried to, as much as possible, maybe say even just once a week would be great, to assume the role of a therapist and work with your child, put the feedback given by the therapist into practice. For example, the therapist might say, oh, there are 5 nouns that I introduced, say, for example, table, shirt, underwear, doll, so on and so forth. So these are maybe 4 or 5 nouns that your child was not so sure of today during the session. And I'm very sure that these nouns are easily found at home. Right? There will definitely be a table, a shirt, underwear somewhere at home. So please, as parents, try to introduce these to your child and work with the child hand in hand. So so the thing is, if this consistent working with your child on such skills will actually make the child's progress much faster. You are more likely to be able to modify the IEP goals after that based on the child's progress, and we can then work more. I mean, this collaboration actually helps your child to a great extent, because your child's skills might be able to, I mean, you're more likely able to modify the IP goals at a faster rate as well. So you're able to quickly tick off the drills or activities and move to a higher level through this collaborative effort. So I think this collaboration and working hand in hand with your therapist is extremely important. So lastly, I would just want to conclude. We have come to the end. So these are some of the conclusions from this webinar. So what I want to say is that online sessions are good. It's not that they are bad. They are good in sustaining and maintaining the skills during this pandemic period. It sure does prevent the regression of skills if parents are also involved in maintaining the skills. If parents also look into the IP plan and the drills that have been introduced by the therapists and work on such activities. If parents are also willing to engage through online games and apps, this can actually make learning very fun for your child, make it very interactive, and so it might actually help your child in sustaining the skills. But I do understand that not all parents have the luxury of time. They may be held up managing their own work and so on. So it may not be as effective as face-to-face sessions. So we do agree with on that aspect. Okay, so yeah, so these are some of the YouTube channels that you can check out for more videos created by ARN. So there's tons of resources for you, and there's also all these videos actually show how we scaffold the learning for the child, how we break down particular activities, say reading comprehension or handwriting skills. We actually have a particular way of tackling all of these work and activities. So please do check out the YouTube channel. And we have come to the end. We have come to the Q&A section. So I believe there is one question. Yeah. So yes. So the question is, during online learning support, how to make the child listen, behave, keep in control throughout the session? So I think both of us have mentioned that it depends on the type of learner your child is. So if your child say it's an early learner, then the way to tackle it would be to actually have the parents sit with the child, work with the child, and most of the child's learning, if they are an early learner, would be done through play. And then you insert one or two questions, activities here and there. So that's typically how you work with an early learner. As for an advanced learner, typically you can give the child a sensory break, right? So it depends on the skill level of the child still. So for advanced learners, typically after say 20 minutes, you can have a sensory break or movement break where the child moves around, has the space to just have his own free time. And that's typically how we do the sessions here at ARN as well. Sarah, would you like to add on anything?
Yeah, I just want to add on for the early learner, because in the sense it is hard for the early learner to even sit for, let's say, some children, even 5 minutes is too much for them. And at that point, it's really not beneficial if we, physically force them to sit or make them do work. It just backfires. So the best thing to do, and this usually happens when children are new to ARN, when they're young, they're just 2.5 or 3 and they've just joined us, they will not sit down, and we accept that. We accept that they don't sit down for a while, and we play a lot with them and build relationship with them. And the same thing applies to parents as well. So if your child is not sitting down, is not showing good on-seat behavior, don't beat yourself about it. I mean, don't get too stressed about it, but you can work towards increasing on-seat behavior. So what we usually do here is maybe just be 2 minutes in the beginning, 2 minutes of just sitting down, and we just teach them hand squat and maybe hand squat for 10 counts. And once they do that, then we let them run around. So you might think, "Oh, but that's such a waste of time. Like there's no, it's not an academic task. It's not, learning anything." But for any child to learn in a school setting, the prerequisite is sitting down. So we go to that level, we go to the basic skills, prerequisite skills required to learn. And it requires a child to sit down and pay attention. Maybe not looking, eye contact may not be consistent, but even if they are complying and sitting down for 2 minutes, we reward them with their favorite topic. So, and slowly we'll increase that 2 minutes to, let's say, 5 minutes and then 10 minutes. And it doesn't happen within a day, it takes time, it takes practice. But as Veena said earlier, it's all about consistency, and we keep doing it. And over time, slowly the child's attention span and the sitting tolerance will increase. So the same with online learning. It may not happen initially, but try not to get discouraged and keep working towards shorter work times, maybe just 2 minutes, and then reward your child for at least sitting down for a short time. And, keep building on that and increasing the sitting time.
Yeah, so I think that's all the questions that we have at the moment. So we have come to the end of the webinar. Yeah, so if you have any questions for us, or if you want to contact us, you can reach us through WhatsApp. You can call our line, or you can contact us through Facebook or Instagram as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you everyone. See you. Stay safe.
Stay safe, stay healthy.